In 1941, Britain stood alone against Nazi Germany, but Hitler didn't need to invade the island to defeat it. He had a simpler plan: starve them into submission. By the spring of 1941, German U-boats were sinking merchant ships faster than Britain could replace them. Food rations were being cut. Fuel was running dangerously low. Winston Churchill would later write that the U-boat peril was the only thing that truly terrified him during the entire war. This is the story of how close Britain came to collapse, not from bombs or bullets, but from hunger. This is the story of the Battle of the Atlantic. To understand Hitler's strategy, you need to understand Britain's fundamental weakness. It was an island that couldn't feed itself. Before the war, Britain imported roughly 55 million tons of supplies every year. Two-thirds of the country's food came from overseas, nearly all of its oil. Most of the raw materials for its factories and weapons production. These supplies came across the Atlantic Ocean in massive convoys of merchant ships, traveling from North America and the British colonies. Cut those supply lines, and Britain would face a simple equation: surrender or starve. Hitler understood this perfectly. In his Directive No. 9, issued in November 1939, he ordered the Kriegsmarine to wage unlimited submarine warfare against British shipping. The goal wasn't just military victory, it was economic strangulation. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of Germany's U-boat fleet, calculated that if his submarines could sink 750,000 tons of Allied shipping per month, Britain's economy would collapse within a year. In the early months of the war, U-boat captains called it the happy time. British defenses were weak, convoy escorts were few, and German submarines hunted with near impunity. Donitz developed the wolf pack tactic. Groups of U-boats would coordinate their attacks, surfacing at night to strike convoys with torpedoes, then disappearing before escorts could respond. It was devastatingly effective. The numbers tell the story. In 1940, U-boats sank over 1,000 Allied ships. In the first 4 months of 1941 alone, they destroyed over 2 million tons of shipping. Britain was losing ships 3 times faster than it could build replacements. One U-boat commander, Otto Kretschmer, sank 47 merchant ships before his capture. Another, Joachim Schepke, destroyed 37. These weren't just statistics. Each sinking meant lost food, fuel, weapons, and often hundreds of lives. The situation grew desperate. Food imports fell by nearly half. Rations were cut again and again. Meat, sugar, eggs, cheese, all became luxuries. The Ministry of Food introduced the Woolton pie, a vegetable dish named after the Minister of Food, which became infamous for containing almost no actual nutrition. By spring 1941, Britain had only 6 weeks of food reserves left. Churchill understood the mathematics of survival. In August 1940, he wrote to President Roosevelt, "The decision for 1941 lies upon the seas." But the seas were becoming graveyards. The Atlantic shipping lanes were littered with wreckage and oil slicks. Sailors called certain routes Torpedo Alley and the Black Pit, areas in the mid-Atlantic where Allied aircraft couldn't provide air cover, leaving convoys completely vulnerable to submarine attack. The human cost was staggering. Merchant sailors faced death rates higher than almost any combat unit in the war. When a torpedo struck, men had minutes, sometimes seconds, to escape before their ship went down. In the freezing Atlantic waters, survival time was measured in minutes. Many ships carried materials so vital that their escorts couldn't stop to rescue survivors. And the threat kept growing. Germany was building new U-boats faster than the Allies could sink them. By 1941, Donitz had over 100 operational submarines, with more launching every month. He was approaching his target of 300 U-boats, enough, he believed, to bring Britain to its knees. Britain's oil reserves were critically low. Its food stockpiles were shrinking weekly. Factory production was slowing as raw materials ran out. Some military strategists began quietly discussing whether Britain could continue the war past 1942. But Britain wasn't fighting alone anymore. Three factors would gradually shift the balance of the Battle of the Atlantic. First, American help. Even before the United States officially entered the war, Roosevelt bent neutrality laws to provide Britain with destroyers, weapons, and supplies through the Lend-Lease program. American shipyards began producing merchant vessels at an incredible rate. By 1943, they could build a Liberty ship in just 42 days. Second, technology. The Allies developed better sonar to detect submerged U-boats. They created shipborne radar that could spot surfaced submarines at night. Most crucially, they broke the German naval Enigma code, allowing them to read U-boat communications and route convoys away from wolf packs. And third, long-range aircraft. Britain's coastal command received planes that could finally cover the mid-Atlantic gap. Suddenly, U-boats couldn't surface safely anywhere in the Atlantic. They were hunted from above as well as from surface ships. The hunters became the hunted. The turning point came in May 1943. In that single month, the Allies sank 41 U-boats, a catastrophic loss rate that Donitz couldn't sustain. For the first time in the war, Germany was losing submarines faster than it could replace them. On May 24, 1943, Donitz ordered his U-boats to withdraw from the North Atlantic. The wolf packs had been defeated. But the victory came at an almost unimaginable price. The Battle of the Atlantic lasted from 1939 to 1945, longer than any other continuous campaign of World War II. The statistics are sobering. The Allies lost approximately 3,500 merchant ships and 175 warships. Over 72,000 Allied sailors and merchant seamen died in the Atlantic. For Britain specifically, roughly 30,000 merchant navy personnel were killed, a death rate of about 25%, higher than any British service except Bomber Command. Germany lost around 780 U-boats out of roughly 1,100 built. Of the approximately 40,000 men who served in the U-boat fleet, 28,000 died and 5,000 were captured, a death rate exceeding 70%. It was the highest casualty rate of any branch of the German armed forces. These weren't just numbers. They were farm boys from Kansas, fishermen from Cornwall, teenagers from Hamburg, all swallowed by the Atlantic. So how close did Hitler come to starving Britain into submission? Closer than most people realize. In early 1941, Britain truly stood on the brink. Its food reserves were measured in weeks. Its oil stockpiles were critically low. Its merchant fleet was being destroyed faster than it could be replaced. A few more months of losses at that rate, and Britain might have faced an impossible choice. Churchill wasn't exaggerating when he called the U-boat war his greatest fear. Unlike the Blitz, or the threat of invasion, this was a threat Britain couldn't directly fight back against. Every meal, every gallon of fuel, every bullet depended on ships successfully crossing 3,000 miles of ocean infested with submarines. The Battle of the Atlantic was won, but just barely. It was won by the courage of merchant sailors who kept sailing despite terrible odds, by the skill of convoy escorts who hunted submarines in impossible conditions, by codebreakers at Bletchley Park who gave the Allies crucial intelligence, by American industrial might that eventually outproduced the Germans, and by technological innovation that slowly tipped the scales. Hitler's strategy of starving Britain almost worked. In the end, it failed, not because it was fundamentally flawed, but because Britain refused to surrender, and the Allies refused to let Britain fall. The Battle of the Atlantic proved that World War II wouldn't be won by dramatic invasions or lightning strikes alone. It would be won by the unglamorous, brutal mathematics of logistics, by the ships that made it through, the supplies that kept coming, and the men who died in freezing waters to keep Britain alive. If you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe my channel. Thank you.